Welcome back to the Wasteland, survivors. Today we uncover a conspiracy 200 years in the making, a secret that will change everything you thought you knew about the world above and the forces that have been shaping it from below. This is the story of Operation Greenhouse, the shadow nation beneath America that never stopped fighting the war, and the one man who decided the truth was worth more than his life. For 2 centuries, you believed you were free, that your choices were your own, that the heroes who shaped the wasteland rose from nothing to become legends. But every champion you celebrated was selected before birth. Every enemy you conquered was designed to fall. Every settlement that thrived was allowed to thrive, and every one that crumbled was pushed. And now, with Reclamation Day approaching, the puppet masters are preparing to cut the strings and take the stage for themselves. The question is whether the wasteland will be ready or whether 200 years of manipulation will end the only way Greenhouse ever planned, with conquest. And if you genuinely enjoy this kind of dark storytelling, consider subscribing and liking the channel, but only if you like the content. They're cutting through the blast door now. I can hear the plasma torches screaming through 8 inches of reinforced steel. 14 minutes, maybe less. So I need you to listen very carefully, because everything you think you know about the wasteland is a lie we wrote. My name is Colonel Marcus Webb. My official designation within the organization is Greenhouse 7 Alpha, though you've never heard that term before. Nobody on the surface has. And in a few minutes, when the termination squad finally breaches this bunker, that designation will be redacted from every database, every file, every record that proves I ever existed. But this transmission will survive. I made sure of it. I made sure someone up there would hear the truth before they silence me forever. For 200 years, you've believed you were free. You've believed that the wasteland was chaos, that your survival was your own, that every choice you made came from your own will. But every single decision, every path you walked, every enemy you faced was written in a bunker you never knew existed. We wrote it. We wrote all of it. And until 3 months ago, I helped them do it. I served 32 years in the Department of Surface Manipulation. That's what we call it down here, surface manipulation, because that's what the wasteland is to us. A surface, a stage, a testing ground, where we've been running experiments that make Vault Tech look like children playing with chemistry sets. I was recruited when I was 26 years old, fresh out of the Greenhouse Military Academy, and they told me I was going to save America. They told me I was going to be part of the greatest project in human history, the preservation and restoration of the United States. They told me the surface was gone, that the radiation had turned everything above into an uninhabitable hellscape, that we were humanity's last hope, hidden beneath the Appalachian Mountains in a network of caverns so vast it would make the engineers of the old world weep with envy. And I believed them. God help me. I believed every word. Let me tell you about Greenhouse. Let me tell you what America really built while Vault Tech was selling those experimental coffins to terrified civilians in 2077. In 2051, 26 years before the Great War, the United States government initiated a project so classified that even the Joint Chiefs didn't have full access. Project Greenhouse. The official purpose was simple: ensure the survival of American government, American military capability, and American way of life in the event of total nuclear annihilation. But the real purpose? The real purpose was to build a nation, not to preserve one, to build a new one, underground, from scratch, with every advantage the old America lacked. While Vault Tech was constructing their network of social experiments across the country, we were hollowing out the Appalachian Mountains on a scale that defied comprehension. District 7 alone, my home district, covers an area larger than pre-war Manhattan, and that's just the agricultural sector. The full Greenhouse network spans from the northern tip of West Virginia, down through Virginia, and into the Carolinas. 12 districts, 50 million people, An entire nation living beneath the surface of a country that thinks it's dead. I grew up in District 3, the educational sector. I never saw natural sunlight until I was 34 years old and deployed to my first surface observation mission. They showed us footage every day when we were children. The burning cities, the ash storms that never ended, footage of what they called the surface reality, and we accepted it without question because we had nothing to compare it to. The teachers told us that we were the chosen ones, that our grandparents had been selected from the finest minds, the strongest bodies, the most loyal patriots of the old America, that our duty was to prepare for Reclamation Day, the day when we would finally emerge and rebuild the nation that had been stolen from us by Chinese nuclear aggression. President Chen addresses Congress every month about Reclamation Day. She's the 47th president in an unbroken line of succession that stretches back to 2077. She stands before our elected representatives, presents data from our surface sensors, and every month, Congress votes to delay emergence because the conditions aren't ready. The radiation levels are too high. The mutant populations are too dangerous. The surface factions are too unstable. And every month, I sat in the intelligence briefing afterward and watched the real data. The data that showed the radiation levels have been stable for decades. The data that showed the surface is not only habitable, but thriving in its own broken way. The data that showed everything they tell Congress is a carefully constructed fiction designed to keep us underground until we're ready. Ready for what? I used to ask myself that question. I don't anymore, because now I know, and knowing is why I have to die. When I was 26, I was recruited into the Department of Surface Manipulation, specifically the Division of Psychological Operations. My supervisor was a man named Director Holbrook, and on my first day, he sat me down and explained what I would really be doing for my country. The heroes of the wasteland. You know their names. Even if you don't know, you know them. The Vault Dweller from Vault 13. The Chosen One from Arroyo. The Lone Wanderer from Vault 101. The Courier who walked the Mojave. The Sole Survivor who emerged from Vault 111. You've heard stories about them, legends, tales of ordinary people who rose up against impossible odds and shaped the wasteland through sheer determination and courage. They weren't ordinary. They were never ordinary. They were ours. Director Holbrook showed me the files. He showed me genetic profiles selected from our database before these individuals were even born. He showed me placement protocols that ensured their families would be assigned to specific vaults. He showed me developmental programs embedded in vault educational systems, subliminal training sequences hidden in terminal interfaces, behavioral conditioning disguised as recreational holotapes. He showed me how we spent decades preparing these individuals to be exactly what we needed them to be when we needed them to be it. The Vault Dweller from Vault 13, we knew that Vault's water chip would fail. We designed it to fail. We needed someone to leave that vault and enter the wasteland at precisely that moment in history, because the Master had become a problem, not a threat to us, not really. His super mutant army could never have touched Greenhouse. We're too deep, too fortified, too well armed. But the Master was building something on the surface that might eventually have become powerful enough to resist us when we emerged, so we needed him eliminated. And we needed it done by a surface dweller, so the other surface factions would see that they were capable of defending themselves, that they didn't need outside intervention, that they could handle their own problems. That was the key. That was always the key. Make them believe they're in control. Make them believe their heroes are their own. Because a population that believes it's free is so much easier to manipulate than one that knows it's enslaved. The Vault Dweller found her water chip. She discovered the Master's plot. She fought her way through super mutants and through the children of the cathedral, and eventually confronted that twisted flesh horror in his cathedral vault beneath the Los Angeles boneyard. And she won. Of course she won. We designed her to win. Every book she found in the wasteland was a greenhouse drop placed by our surface operatives at locations we knew she would pass through. Every bobblehead that boosted her abilities was manufactured in our facilities and seeded along her projected path. Every teacher who helped her, every ally who joined her cause, every weapon that came into her hands at just the right moment, all of it was choreographed. She was the first, the prototype, and she performed beautifully. Richard Gray, the man who became the master, was a brilliant scientist before his transformation. He'd been exposed to the forced evolutionary virus at the Mariposa military base after leading an expedition there in 2102. The FEV mutated him into something barely human, but his intelligence survived. Enhanced, even. And he developed a philosophy, a twisted philosophy about unity, about forcing humanity to evolve past its tendency toward war and destruction by transforming everyone into super mutants. He built an army, he built a religion, he built a movement that could have spread across the entire western seaboard if it hadn't been stopped. And it was all a test, not his test, ours. We needed to know if our programmed hero could eliminate a large-scale surface threat. We needed to measure response times, tactical decision-making, psychological resilience under extreme pressure. The Master's unity was the first controlled opposition we deployed against our own asset, and the Vault Dweller passed with exceptional marks. When she destroyed Mariposa and killed the Master, she proved the concept. Vault Dwellers could be programmed, they could be shaped, they could be aimed like weapons at any target we chose, and they would perform exactly as designed. The second generation was even more refined. I can see you thinking. I can feel the questions forming in your mind because I had the same questions when I first saw the files. How? How could you possibly control someone that precisely? They're human beings, not robots. They have free will. They make their own choices. Do they? Do you? Think about the lone wanderer, born in the Jefferson Memorial on the 13th of July 2258. Mother died in childbirth. Father took the child and traveled to Vault 101, where he made a deal with the overseer to become the vault's doctor. The child grew up in that vault for 19 years, believing they had been born there, believing their whole life that the vault was the only world that existed. Then one day, their father disappeared, and they had to escape into the wasteland to find him. What were the odds? What were the odds that a scientist working on a water purification project would decide to raise his child in a sealed vault for nearly 2 decades? What were the odds that the overseer would allow an outsider in, violating every protocol the vault operated under? What were the odds that the child would grow up to be so skilled in combat, so capable of surviving in a hostile environment they had never been exposed to, that they could track their father across the capital wasteland and become one of the most influential figures in the region? There are no odds. There's only design. James, the lone wanderer's father, was a greenhouse asset, not a willing one. He never knew he was being used. He genuinely believed in Project Purity. He genuinely wanted to bring clean water to the wasteland. But his assignment to that project, his meeting with Catherine, his placement in Vault 101 after her death, all of it was arranged. The overseer of Vault 101 received instructions from a source he believed was Vault Tech Corporate. He was told to accept James and his child as a special case, to give them sanctuary, to allow the child to grow up as a normal Vault dweller, and for 19 years, that child was conditioned. Every lesson in the Vault classroom, every training session with the BB gun their father gave them, every GOAT exam question that nudged them toward specific skill sets, all of it was preparation. When James left Vault 101 inches, 2,277, he thought he was making a choice. He thought he was returning to his life's work because he believed the time was right. But the time was right because we made it right. We needed the capital wasteland destabilized. The Brotherhood of Steel chapter there had become too powerful, too organized. They were bringing order to the region, and order on the surface is dangerous to our plans. Ordered civilizations resist conquest. Chaotic ones collapse and beg for someone to save them. So we activated Project Purity, not to give the wasteland clean water, to start a war. The Enclave wasn't a separate organization. I need you to understand that. Everything you think you know about the Enclave is a story we told to explain away our reconnaissance division. We needed eyes on the surface. We needed to test weapons, deploy troops, conduct field experiments. But we couldn't do that as Greenhouse. Nobody on the surface could know we existed, so we created a cover story. We created the Enclave. The Enclave was given inferior resources. Intentionally, their power armor was advanced compared to what the Brotherhood had, but it was decades behind what our soldiers wear. Their weapons were powerful, but they were manufacturing rejects, prototypes that didn't meet our standards. Their ideology was given deliberate flaws, a genocidal fixation on purity that would inevitably turn the entire wasteland against them. They were designed to be villains, obvious, cartoonish, easy to hate, because when the wasteland rallied against them, when heroes rose up to destroy them, we were watching, taking notes, learning exactly how much force the surface could muster, how quickly they could organize, how effectively they could fight. Every vertibird crash was calculated. Every failed Enclave operation was intentional. Colonel Augustus Autumn was a Greenhouse officer who believed he was serving the real Enclave, the true continuation of the American government. He was never told about Greenhouse. He was never told that his entire organization was a puppet show staged for our benefit. When the lone wanderer killed him in the Jefferson Memorial, they thought they were striking a blow for freedom. They were actually completing their assignment. You want to know the truth about Project Purity? It works. It purifies water. It does exactly what it was designed to do. But that's not why we activated it. We activated it because we needed the Enclave destroyed, and we needed it destroyed by a surface hero that the wasteland could believe in. We needed the capital wasteland to see that they could defeat America's remnants on their own. We needed them to feel safe, because safe populations don't prepare for war. I could go through all of them. The chosen one who destroyed the Enclave oil rig, the courier who decided the fate of Hoover Dam, the sole survivor who obliterated the Institute. Every single one of them was a Greenhouse project. Every single one of them was selected, programmed, deployed, and monitored to achieve specific strategic objectives. But I don't have time to explain them all. I have maybe 9 minutes left now. I can hear the second layer of the blast door starting to buckle. Let me tell you about the one that made me start asking questions. Let me tell you about the courier. In 2281, a courier was hired to deliver a package across the Mojave Wasteland, a platinum chip, a data storage device that Robert House needed to upgrade his Securitron army and take control of New Vegas. The courier was shot in the head by a man named Benny, left for dead in a shallow grave, and somehow survived to track Benny down and become the most powerful individual in the region. That's the story, you know. Here's what actually happened. The courier was never meant to deliver that chip. The courier was meant to die. Benny was a Greenhouse asset, recruited years earlier and given specific instructions. Kill the courier, take the chip, and use it to destabilize New Vegas by playing the NCR and Caesar's Legion against each other. We needed the Mojave to remain in conflict. We needed both factions to exhaust themselves fighting over Hoover Dam so that neither would be strong enough to resist our emergence. But the courier survived. That wasn't supposed to happen. For the first time in the history of the program, one of our designated targets didn't follow the script. The courier climbed out of that grave and started making choices we hadn't anticipated. They built alliances we hadn't predicted. They took control of factions we'd meant to manipulate into destroying each other. And in the end, they decided the fate of the entire region in a way that had nothing to do with our plans. Director Holbrook was furious. He wanted the courier eliminated immediately, but the committee overruled him. They said the courier was too visible, too influential. Killing them would draw too much attention. So instead, they adjusted. They incorporated the courier's actions into a new model. They called it adaptive programming. If an asset goes off script, study the deviation, learn from it, and use that knowledge to make the next asset more predictable. I looked at the courier's file. I looked at their genetic profile, their developmental history, their psychological evaluations, and I saw something that made my stomach turn. I saw that the courier wasn't one of ours. The courier was never selected, never programmed, never conditioned. They were just a person, an ordinary wastelander who happened to be carrying the wrong package at the wrong time. And they survived, and they won, and they did it without any of our help. That's when I started to wonder, if the courier could do that on their own, what did that mean for everything else we'd done? What did it mean for the vault dweller and the lone wanderer and all the others? Were they really just following our programming? Or did they have something inside them that we never put there? I started digging, and the deeper I dug, the more I found. Consider this. Every piece of information you've ever received about the wasteland came from somewhere. Traders who passed through settlements, travelers who shared stories, radio broadcasts from Three Dog or Mr. New Vegas. But where did those people get their information? Who told them what was happening in the world? We did. We've been seeding information into the wasteland since 2089. Rumors, legends, warnings, histories. We write them, and then we introduce them through assets we've placed in every major settlement. The Brotherhood of Steel thinks they're uncovering pre-war secrets in abandoned military bases. They're actually finding documents we planted for them to find, crafted to lead them to specific conclusions. The New California Republic thinks it's building a new nation based on the ideals of old America. They're actually following a societal template we designed, one that ensures they'll develop in predictable ways with predictable weaknesses. Imagine that. Imagine spending your whole life believing you're making choices and then finding out that someone else wrote all the options. That's what the wasteland is, a controlled environment, a cage so big that the rats inside never realize they're not free, and I helped build it. For 32 years, I helped maintain the illusion. I wrote reports on surface faction psychology. I designed influence campaigns. I recommended which settlements should be supported and which should be allowed to fail. I decided which rumors to spread and which truths to bury. I was good at my job. I was proud of it. I was a monster. 3 months ago, I was assigned to a new project, Project Extended Winter. And that's when I finally understood what Greenhouse really is. That's when I understood why we've been keeping the wasteland broken for 200 years. And that's when I decided that I couldn't stay silent anymore, even if speaking means dying. If you're still with me after hearing this, hit that like and subscribe button. I need to tell you about Extended Winter. I need to tell you what we've been doing to the atmosphere. But first, I need you to understand the scope of what you're dealing with. 50 million people. That's the current population of Greenhouse. 12 districts, each one specialized for a different purpose. Agricultural production, industrial manufacturing, military training, scientific research. We have cities down here, real cities, with schools and hospitals and shopping centers and parks. We have a functioning economy, a representative government, a legal system, a free press that reports on what the committee wants reported. We have everything the old America had, except sunlight, and we've had it for 2 centuries. Our military strength is beyond anything the surface has ever seen. 2 million active duty soldiers in the Reclamation Army. That's not a militia. That's not a collection of wastelanders in scavenged armor. That's a professional fighting force that has been training for this moment since the day Greenhouse was founded. They wear T-65 power armor, not the T-45 or T-51 or T-60 models the Brotherhood collects, like relics, T-65. The most advanced power armor ever developed by the United States government, manufactured exclusively for the Secret Service units that guard our most sensitive installations. Every soldier in the Reclamation Army is equipped with it. Every single one. Our weapon systems are equally advanced. Plasma rifles that make the Enclave's arsenal look like toys. Gauss weaponry that can punch through Brotherhood power armor like paper. Aerial assault vehicles that make vertibirds look like prop planes. And we have transport infrastructure that you cannot possibly imagine. Tunnels. Thousands of miles of tunnels connecting our districts to each other and to strategic locations across the entire eastern seaboard. We can move troops from Greenhouse to any major wasteland settlement in hours. We have exit points in the Capital Wasteland, the Commonwealth, Appalachia, and a dozen other locations that your maps don't even show. When Reclamation Day comes, it won't be an emergence. It won't be a reintroduction of American government to the wasteland. It will be a conquest. 2 million soldiers deploying simultaneously across every major population center on the eastern surface. And nobody up there will be ready, because we've made sure you won't be. That's what extended winter is. It's the reason the wasteland never recovers. Since 2089, we've been seeding the atmosphere with radiation dispersal agents. We launch them from concealed facilities in the mountains. They spread across the jet stream and settle over the surface, ensuring that the background radiation never drops below a certain threshold. We map every source of clean water, every patch of fertile soil, every stable settlement that starts to grow too successful, and we poison them. Not enough to kill everyone, just enough to keep them desperate. Just enough to make sure they spend all their energy surviving instead of building. The reason the wasteland is still broken after 200 years isn't because nuclear war is that devastating. It's because we won't let it heal. Every time a settlement starts to thrive, we introduce a complication. A raider gang that suddenly gets better weapons. A super mutant migration that just happens to pass through the area. A plague that burns through the population before anyone can find a cure. We've done this hundreds of times. Thousands. We've killed more people with manufactured disasters than the Great War killed with bombs. And I helped. I signed off on operations. I provided intelligence assessments. I calculated acceptable casualty rates. I told myself it was necessary. I told myself that short-term suffering would lead to long-term salvation when we finally emerged and unified the surface under proper American governance. I told myself the surface dwellers would thank us eventually. 3 months ago, I was reviewing the projections for extended winter's continuation. The models showed that by 2290, we would have eliminated every surface faction capable of offering meaningful resistance to the Reclamation Army. The Brotherhood, both on the east and west coasts, the new California Republic, the remnants of the Legion, the Institute, which was actually another one of our projects that got slightly out of control, all of them gone or weakened to the point of irrelevance. I looked at those projections, and for the first time, I saw the endgame. I saw what Reclamation Day would actually look like. I saw 2 million soldiers marching out of the mountains and subjugating every settlement they found. I saw wastelanders who thought they were free suddenly discovering that they had been slaves all along, that their entire civilization was a game we played for our own benefit. I saw resistance. I saw massacre. I saw the surface dying under the boot of an army that had never known anything except how to follow orders and conquer enemies. And I saw myself. I saw what I had become. I saw 32 years of service to an organization that never wanted to save anyone, that never wanted to rebuild anything, that only wanted power, control, and the absolute certainty that no one would ever be able to challenge them. I transmitted everything to a Brotherhood scribe, a woman I've been feeding information to for 6 years. She doesn't know my real name. She doesn't know I'm Greenhouse. She thinks I'm a sympathetic Enclave defector who wants to atone for past sins. And maybe that's true. Maybe that's exactly what I am. The information I sent her includes locations of greenhouse exit tunnels, deployment schedules for the Reclamation Army, technical specifications for our weapons systems, and a complete list of surface assets currently embedded in every major faction. If she can get that information to the right people, if the Brotherhood and the NCR and whatever's left of the other groups can actually work together for once in their miserable history, they might have a chance. A small chance, but a chance. Greenhouse is going to intercept the transmission. They intercept everything, but maybe some of it will get through. Maybe enough of it will get through. Tell me something. Have you ever wondered why the Wasteland's heroes never talk to each other? Why the Vault Dwellers' descendants in Arroyo never made contact with the Lone Wanderer's Brotherhood in the capital Wasteland? Why the Courier's influence in the Mojave never extended to the Commonwealth? They're all legendary figures. They all shaped their regions in profound ways, but they never connected. They never shared information. They never built a network. That's because we prevented it. We kept them isolated. We made sure their influence stayed local, so they would never realize how similar their stories were. We couldn't let them compare notes. We couldn't let them figure out that they were all following the same script. But now you know. Now you can tell them. Find the Vault Dwellers' descendants. They're still out there, somewhere in New California. Find the Lone Wanderer's Brotherhood contacts. They're in the Citadel, or what's left of it after the Enclave War. Find whoever's left of the Courier's network in the Mojave. Tell them Greenhouse is real. Tell them Reclamation Day is coming. Tell them it's scheduled for 2291. That's 6 years. Maybe less if the committee decides to accelerate. 6 years to do what no one in the Wasteland has ever done. Unite, actually unite. Not the temporary alliances you form to fight off a common enemy and then dissolve the moment the threat is gone. Real unity. Shared intelligence. Coordinated defense. A recognition that you're all fighting the same enemy, even if you didn't know it until now. I don't know if it's possible. I've spent my whole career studying surface psychology, and I've never seen evidence that you're capable of it. You're too fractured, too suspicious, too addicted to your own independence. That's by design, of course. We made you that way. But maybe knowing that you were made that way is enough to let you change. God, I hope so. Because if you can't, then everything I'm about to die for is meaningless. 4 minutes, maybe 3. I can hear them cutting through the final layer now. I need to tell you about the one thing we never anticipated. The one thing that might actually matter. The Courier wasn't programmed. The Courier was never selected. They were just a person who refused to stay dead, and they changed everything anyway. That's what the committee never understood. That's what I never understood until I started asking the wrong questions. Our programming works. Our conditioning is effective. Our heroes do what we design them to do. But they do it because there's something inside them that wants to do it. Something we didn't put there. Something that was there all along, waiting for a chance to come out. Maybe the Vault Dweller would have saved Vault 13 without our help. Maybe the Lone Wanderer would have fought the Enclave anyway. Maybe they weren't following our script. Maybe we just wrote a script that matched what they were already going to do. I don't know. I'll never know now. But I know this. If we could make heroes by selecting the right genetics and applying the right conditioning, then we would have made them ourselves. We would have sent Greenhouse soldiers to do those missions instead of relying on Vault Dwellers. But we didn't, because we couldn't. Because whatever it is that makes a hero, it's not something you can manufacture in a lab. The surface has that. The surface has always had that. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough. My name is Colonel Marcus Webb. I served Greenhouse for 32 years, and I'm going to die in about 2 minutes because I finally decided to serve something else instead. If you're hearing this, the transmission got out. If you're hearing this, there's still hope. Tell them, Wasteland. Tell everyone. America is coming back, and unless you're ready, you're going to wish the bombs had finished the job. They're through. I can hear the boots now. Tactical formation, 6 operators, moving through the outer corridor toward my position. Standard termination protocol. They'll secure the room, confirm my identity, and execute me on the spot. No trial, no detention, no chance for me to spread any more of my contamination to other greenhouse personnel. That's what they'll call it, contamination. Like the truth is a disease. Maybe it is. Maybe that's exactly what it is. But the transmission went out. I can see the confirmation on my terminal. The data package reached the relay station in Appalachia, and from there it scattered across every Brotherhood frequency I could find. Someone heard it. Someone is listening right now, and that means I have time. Not much. Maybe 2 minutes of talking before they breach this door and put a plasma bolt through my skull. But 2 minutes is enough. 2 minutes is enough to tell you what I couldn't fit in the first transmission. Let me tell you about the Institute. You know them, or you think you do. The boogeyman of the Commonwealth. The shadowy organization that created synths, kidnapped settlers, replaced people with artificial duplicates. The enemy that the sole survivor eventually destroyed or joined, depending on which version of the story you believe. The Institute was real. Everything you've heard about them is true. But what you don't know is where they came from. What you don't know is who gave them the tools to become what they became. We did. In 2178, 101 years after the Great War, we inserted an operative into the Commonwealth Institute of Problem Technology. At that point, the Institute was just a collection of scientists living in the basement of a ruined university, trying to preserve pre-war knowledge and develop new technologies to help the surface recover. They were idealists. They believed in progress. They believed that science could save humanity from the mess it had made of itself. We couldn't allow that. A strong, technologically advanced faction in the Commonwealth would eventually become a threat to our emergence. So we gave them a gift. We gave them teleportation. Not directly, of course. Our operative, a geneticist named Chen, joined their research team and spent decades nudging them toward specific breakthroughs. Molecular relay technology, synthetic organism development, advanced robotics. Every major advancement the Institute made over the next century came from seeds we planted, and then we watched. We watched them retreat further underground. We watched them grow paranoid and isolated. We watched them develop a philosophy that the surface was beyond saving, that the only hope for humanity was to build something new in their sterile laboratories. We watched them create synths, first as tools, then as infiltrators, then as something uncomfortably close to people. We watched them make enemies of everyone on the surface, and when the time was right, we activated the sole survivor. Vault 111 was a greenhouse facility, not officially. On paper, it was a vault tech installation designed to test the long-term effects of cryogenic suspension. But we were the ones who selected the residents. We were the ones who ensured that a specific family would be in a specific pod when the bombs fell. We were the ones who sent Kellogg to retrieve the infant Sean in 2227, knowing that one day we would need the surviving parent to emerge and destroy what we had created. Sean grew up in the Institute. He became their leader. He inherited all the arrogance and isolation that we had carefully cultivated in that organization for over a century. And when he was old enough to start asking questions about his origins, we let him find his frozen parent in Vault 111. We let him open the pod. We let him release the sole survivor into the Commonwealth. The rest played out exactly as we designed. The sole survivor searched for their child. They discovered the Institute. They made alliances with the Brotherhood, or the Railroad, or the Minutemen, and eventually they made a choice. They either destroyed the Institute or took control of it. Either outcome served our purposes. If they destroyed it, They eliminated a potential rival. If they took control of it, they became responsible for an organization so hated by the surface that they would never be able to unite the Commonwealth against us. Either way, the Commonwealth remained fractured. Either way, the surface stayed weak. I wonder sometimes if the sole survivor ever realized what they were. I wonder if they ever looked back at their life and saw the invisible strings attached to every choice they made. Their spouse dying in front of them, their child stolen, their entire pre-war existence erased and replaced with a single overwhelming motivation. Find Sean. That's all they could think about. That's all we let them think about. How do you manipulate someone absolutely? You give them something to love, and then you take it away. You give them a purpose so consuming that they never stop to ask who gave it to them. The sole survivor wasn't fighting for the Commonwealth. They weren't fighting for the future of the wasteland. They were fighting for their child, for their family, for the life that was stolen from them 200 years ago. We stole it. We gave them the motivation to do exactly what we needed, and they never even knew. I used to think that was clever. I used to admire the elegance of it. A perfect closed loop of psychological control, invisible and absolute. Now it just makes me sick. There's a question I need you to consider. A question that's going to determine whether anything I'm telling you actually matters. What makes someone a hero? Is it genetics? Is it training? Is it the circumstances they find themselves in, the challenges they're forced to overcome? Or is it something else? Something internal, something that exists independent of all the external factors that shape a person's life. I've read thousands of psychological profiles. I've studied the decision-making patterns of every major surface figure for the past 3 decades. I've seen the data on how people respond to stress, to fear, to impossible choices, and I still don't know the answer. I still can't tell you what separates a hero from everyone else. But I know this. The courier wasn't selected. The courier wasn't programmed. The courier took 2 bullets to the skull and woke up in a shallow grave with nothing but a name to chase and a burning need to know why. And they changed everything. They weren't supposed to survive. I told you that already. But I didn't tell you what happened afterward. I didn't tell you how the committee reacted when they realized their entire Mojave operation had gone off the rails. They panicked. For the first time in 2 centuries, they panicked. Director Holbrook wanted the courier killed immediately, but the committee overruled him. They said it was too risky. The courier was too visible, too connected, too influential. If they died suddenly, it would raise questions. It might expose our operations in the region. So instead, they did something they had never done before. They adapted. They watched the courier's choices, studied their patterns, and tried to predict where they would end up. When the courier sided with Robert House, we prepared contingencies for a new Vegas under his control. When they turned against him, we prepared for independent Vegas. When they worked with the NCR, we updated our models for California. When they allied with the Legion, we adjusted our projections for the East. The courier was chaos. The courier was a variable we couldn't account for, a factor that threw off every equation we tried to build. And the more they acted, the more our models failed. By the time the Second Battle of Hoover Dam was over, our predictions for the Mojave region were essentially useless. We had no idea what the courier would do next. We had no idea what they had already done. That's when I started to understand. That's when I started to see the flaw in everything we had built. Our system works on control, absolute control. We select the subjects, we design the conditions, we predict the outcomes, and we adjust as necessary to keep everything on track. But control requires predictability. Control requires that people behave according to the models we build for them. And the courier proved that they don't. They proved that there's something in human beings that we can't account for, something that breaks free of the programming no matter how carefully we design it. The committee called it an anomaly, a statistical outlier. They said the courier was 1 in a million, a freak occurrence that would never happen again. I think they were wrong. I think the courier was just the first one we noticed. I think all of our heroes had that same thing inside them, that same unpredictable spark, and the only reason they followed our scripts is because our scripts happened to align with what they would have done anyway. We didn't control them. We just wrote down what they were already going to do and pretended we made it happen. And if that's true, then we've been lying to ourselves for 200 years. We've been taking credit for something we didn't create. We've been assuming we're the masters, when really we're just very attentive observers. What happens when the wasteland figures that out? What happens when they realize they were never as weak as we told them they were? Let me tell you something else. Something that might actually give you hope. If you're capable of feeling that after everything I've said, the Brotherhood of Steel is not what we wanted them to be. When we designed the surface factions, we built the Brotherhood to be a dead end. A technological hoarding cult with no interest in the outside world, no capacity for expansion, no ability to threaten our emergence. We gave them a philosophy of isolation. We gave them a rigid hierarchy that would resist change. We gave them an obsession with preserving the past instead of building the future. And it worked. For over a century, it worked perfectly. The original Brotherhood in California stayed in their bunkers and collected their relics and let the NCR grow around them without ever becoming a real factor in regional politics. They were exactly what we designed them to be. But then something happened, something we didn't anticipate. Roger Maxon's descendants started to change. It started with Rhombus, the leader of their paladin caste around 2150. He pushed the Brotherhood to be more active, more engaged with the wasteland. He argued that hoarding technology served no purpose if they didn't use it to protect people. The elders resisted, but he planted seeds that grew over the next several decades. Then came the schism. Around 2254, a group of Brotherhood members left California and traveled east. They were supposed to be a minor expedition, a small force sent to investigate rumors of advanced technology in the capital wasteland. But when they arrived, they found a region in chaos, super mutants everywhere, raiders preying on every settlement, no organized defense, no government, no hope, and their leader, a man named Owen Lyons, made a choice that we never programmed him to make. He decided to help. He turned the Brotherhood expedition into a permanent presence. He focused on protecting the people of the capital wasteland instead of just collecting technology. He took in local recruits, something the Brotherhood had never done before. He made enemies of the super mutants and the Enclave and anyone else who threatened the civilians he had decided to protect. The elders back in California were furious. They called him a traitor to the Brotherhood's ideals. They cut him off from supplies and reinforcements. They told him he was on his own, and he kept going. He kept protecting people. He kept building something that looked less like the Brotherhood we designed and more like an actual military force capable of governing a region that wasn't supposed to happen. The Brotherhood was supposed to stay isolated. They were supposed to be irrelevant by the time we emerged, but Lyons changed them. His daughter Sarah changed them even more. And by the time Arthur Maxon took over in 2283, the Eastern Brotherhood was the most powerful faction on the Atlantic seaboard. We tried to adjust. We tried to use the sole survivor to weaken them in the Commonwealth, but it didn't work the way we planned. Even when the sole survivor opposed the Brotherhood, even when they destroyed the Pridwin, the organization survived. They adapted, they recruited, they expanded into new regions, while their California branch withered into irrelevance. The Brotherhood is a problem. That's what Director Holbrook says in every briefing now. The Brotherhood is a problem that needs to be solved before Reclamation Day, because if we emerge and the Brotherhood is still strong, they'll fight us. They have the technology to fight us. They have the organization. They have the will. And they have something else. They have a story about themselves that we didn't write. They have a belief in what they're doing that doesn't come from our programming. Lyons gave them that. Lyons and everyone who followed his example. They rewrote the Brotherhood's purpose from the inside. and now they're not what we designed anymore. If the Brotherhood can change, then maybe everyone can. Maybe the wasteland isn't as controllable as we thought. Maybe all our models and projections and psychological profiles are just guesses, and the truth is that people are always capable of surprising you. I have to believe that. I have to believe it's possible to break free of the script, because if it's not, then nothing I'm doing matters. If the wasteland is really as weak and fractured as our projections say, then you'll never unite against us. You'll never be ready for Reclamation Day. You'll do exactly what we expect, and 2 million soldiers in T-65 power armor will roll over you like you aren't even there. But the courier surprised us. The Brotherhood surprised us. And maybe you'll surprise us too. Here's something I want you to think about. Something I want you to discuss with whoever's listening to this with you. If you knew that someone was watching everything you did, predicting every choice you made, manipulating every situation you found yourself in, what would you do differently? How would you prove that you weren't just following the script they wrote for you? I don't know the answer. I'm not sure there is one, but I know you need to find it, because that's the only way you're going to survive what's coming. The door is buckling now. I can see the plasma scoring through the metal. Maybe 30 seconds, maybe less. Let me tell you about Reclamation Day. I've seen the plans. I've seen the deployment schedules, the target lists, the occupation protocols. I've seen what happens after the Reclamation Army secures the surface settlements. It's not pretty. The committee's official position is that surface dwellers will be integrated into greenhouse society as second-class citizens. They'll be given housing in designated sectors, assigned to labor duties appropriate to their skills, and educated in proper American values over the course of a generation. Their children will be enrolled in greenhouse schools. Their communities will be dissolved. Their cultures, their traditions, their entire way of life will be erased and replaced with ours. That's the official position. The reality will be much worse. The Reclamation Army has been training for this operation for 50 years. They've been told that the surface is populated by mutants and degenerates, by raiders and monsters, by people so corrupted by radiation that they're barely human anymore. They've been shown footage of super mutant attacks, of raider atrocities, of feral ghoul swarms tearing through settlements. They've been conditioned to see the surface as enemy territory, to see everyone living on it as potential threats. When they emerge, they're not going to be gentle. They're not going to ask questions. They're going to secure their objectives by whatever means necessary, and anyone who resists is going to be classified as hostile and eliminated. I've seen the casualty projections. The committee expects 60% of the surface population to be killed during the initial occupation. 60%. That's millions of people, men, women, children, ghouls who were living peacefully in their settlements, super mutants who just wanted to be left alone, settlers and traders and farmers who never hurt anyone. 60% dead, and the committee considers that an acceptable outcome. The survivors will be sorted. Genetically pure humans will be processed for integration. Anyone with significant mutation will be exterminated or sterilized. Synths will be destroyed on sight. Ghouls will be relocated to containment zones. The wasteland will be cleansed, purified, made ready for proper American civilization. That's what Reclamation Day means. That's what I was working toward for 32 years. I can't stop it. I know that. One colonel going rogue isn't going to bring down an organization that's been building toward this moment for 2 centuries. But maybe I can delay it. Maybe I can give the surface time to prepare. Maybe I can give you enough information to make the casualties 40% instead of 60 or 30 or 20. Every percentage point is thousands of lives. Every life is someone who deserved better than what we planned for them. The door is gone. I can see them now. 6 operators in black tactical armor, weapons raised. They look like they expected me to fight. I'm not going to fight. There's no point. I just need another few seconds to finish what I started. There are others like me. Other officers who've seen the files, scientists who've questioned the ethics, Soldiers who don't believe anymore. We don't talk about it openly. Descent in greenhouse ends with voluntary relocation to the deep geothermal levels, and nobody comes back from there. But we know each other. We find each other. And some of us have been preparing for this moment for years. I'm not the only transmission that went out today. I'm not the only one who decided that silence was no longer acceptable. Across greenhouse, in every district, there are people making the same choice I made, sending information, sabotaging systems, preparing for the day when the wasteland finally fights back. We're not enough. I know we're not enough, but we're a start. Find the others. Find the Brotherhood scribes who received our data. Find the railroad agents who know how to move information through hostile territory. Find the Minutemen and the NCR Rangers and the Desert Rangers and everyone else who still believes that the wasteland can be something better than what it is. Tell them what's coming. Tell them they have 6 years. Tell them that if they don't unite, if they don't put aside their differences and build something stronger than anything they've built before, then everything they've survived for will be for nothing. Tell them that America is coming back, and tell them that they need to be ready. The lead operator is shouting at me now. He's telling me to step away from the terminal. He's telling me that I'm under arrest for treason against the United States government. Treason. That's funny. I spent 32 years committing treason against the surface, and they called that patriotism. I spent 3 months trying to undo some of the damage, and they call that treason. I guess it depends on which America you're loyal to. I'm not stepping away from the terminal. I'm not going to let them interrupt this transmission. They can kill me, but they can't kill what I've already said. They can't unsend the data. They can't make you unhear the truth. Tell me something, Wasteland. When you look at your settlements, your factions, your fragile little civilizations built out of scrap and hope, do you see weakness? Do you see people who barely survive, who fight each other over water and territory and ideology, who can't get out of their own way long enough to build something that lasts? That's what we see. That's what all our models tell us, that you're too broken to resist, that you'll fall the moment we push. But the courier didn't fall. The Brotherhood didn't fall. Every time we expected you to collapse, you found a way to keep going. Every time we thought we had you predicted, you did something we didn't expect. Maybe that's enough. Maybe that stubborn refusal to die the way you're supposed to is exactly what you need to survive this. The operator is raising his weapon. He's done waiting. One last thing. This is important. The scheduled date for Reclamation Day is the summer of 2291, but the committee is considering acceleration. They're watching surface faction strength, and they're worried about the Brotherhood's expansion. If they decide the surface is getting too organized, they'll move the date up. Could be 2290, could be 2289, could be next year if they get scared enough. You don't have 6 years. You have whatever time they decide to give you, so don't waste it. Don't spend it fighting each other over who gets to control some ruined city or whose ideology is the right one. Spend it getting ready. Build alliances. Share intelligence. Train together. Learn from each other. Figure out how to fight an enemy with superior numbers, superior technology, and 2 centuries of planning behind them. And find the heroes. Find the Vault Dwellers' descendants. Find the lone wanderer, if they're still alive. Find the courier. Find the sole survivor. Find everyone who ever stood up against impossible odds and won. Because you're going to need them. You're going to need every single one of them, and you're going to need them to finally start talking to each other. The operator's finger is on the trigger. This is Colonel Marcus Webb, designation Greenhouse 7 Alpha. 32 years of service to an organization I no longer believe in. I'm sorry. For everything I did, for everything I helped them do, make it mean something, please. Make it if this story has kept you listening this far, and you want more of these dark confessions from the wasteland, hit that like button. It really motivates me to create similar Fallout lores. This is a supplemental recording. If you're hearing this, It means the primary transmission completed before termination. It means I'm dead, and you're listening to what I prepared in advance. I knew I wouldn't have time to say everything. There's too much. 200 years of secrets, 200 years of operations, 200 years of lies, layered on top of lies, until even the people telling them forgot what the truth looked like. I couldn't fit it all into one desperate broadcast while plasma torches cut through my door, so I recorded these files separately. I hid them in the data package I sent to the Brotherhood scribe. And now you're hearing them. Good. That means it worked. That means someone is actually listening. Let me tell you about the thing that scared me the most. The thing that finally broke whatever loyalty I still had to Greenhouse and made me understand that I couldn't stay silent anymore. It wasn't the casualty projections. It wasn't the reclamation army or the occupation protocols or even extended winter. Those things are monstrous, but they're the kind of monstrous I had already accepted. The kind I had rationalized away with talk of necessary sacrifices and long-term benefits. No, what broke me was the children. In Greenhouse, we have a program called the Future Leaders Initiative. It's exactly what it sounds like. We identify children with exceptional genetic profiles and psychological aptitudes, and we put them through an accelerated development track designed to produce the next generation of Greenhouse leadership. Military commanders, scientific directors, political strategists, the people who will run our society for the next 50 years. I went through that program. Most senior officers did. It's rigorous. It's demanding. It pushes you harder than you thought you could be pushed. But it's fair. The children who enter it are volunteers, or at least their parents volunteer them. They know what they're signing up for. 3 months ago, I discovered that we have a parallel program, one that isn't voluntary, one that recruits subjects from a source that made my stomach turn when I finally understood what I was looking at: surface children. Since 2195, Greenhouse has been conducting covert extractions from surface settlements. We identify children with genetic profiles that match our requirements. We fabricate circumstances that separate them from their families, and we bring them underground. Raider attacks that kill everyone except the child we want. Diseases that wipe out settlements but somehow spare a few survivors. Traitors who offer to take orphans somewhere safe and then disappear into tunnels that lead to our intake facilities. Thousands of children, over 90 years, thousands of children taken from the surface and brought to Greenhouse to be raised as ours. They don't remember their origins. We make sure of that. Memory, modification techniques, psychological conditioning, complete immersion in Greenhouse culture from the moment they arrive. By the time they're adults, they believe they were born in our districts. They believe their parents are Greenhouse citizens. They believe everything we tell them because they have no other frame of reference. Some of them become soldiers in the reclamation army. Some of them become scientists or administrators or politicians. Some of them rise to senior positions, making decisions about surface operations without ever knowing that they came from the surface themselves. I might be one of them. I don't know. I can't know. I tried to access my own origin file after I discovered the program, but it was classified above my clearance level. I tried to remember my earliest childhood, but everything before age 6 is a blur of images that could be real memories or could be implanted constructs. I asked my parents questions, careful questions designed not to arouse suspicion, but their answers were exactly what they should have been, exactly what mine would have been if someone asked me about my children. Maybe I'm a natural-born Greenhouse citizen. Maybe my genetic profile and my psychological aptitude were inherited from generations of loyal Americans who sheltered beneath the mountains since 2077. Or maybe I was a surface child. Maybe I had a family up there, a mother and father who loved me, who lost me to a raider attack or a plague or a traitor's lie. Maybe everything I thought I knew about myself is just another layer of programming. I'll never find out now. They'll redact my file completely after they kill me. They'll erase every trace that I existed, just like they erased the origins of every extracted child. But you can find out. You can look at your own communities and ask questions. You can count the children who disappeared over the years, the settlements that were wiped out with only the youngest survivors left behind, the orphans who were taken somewhere safe and never seen again. We took them. We took your children, and we turned them into weapons that will be used against you when Reclamation Day comes. Think about that. Think about the soldiers in T-65 power armor marching out of the mountains to conquer your settlements. Some of them might be your children, your grandchildren, your cousins and nephews and nieces who vanished decades ago and were mourned as dead. They're not dead. They're just not yours anymore. I don't know how you process that. I don't know how you fight an enemy that might be made of your own stolen families. But you need to know the truth. You need to understand exactly what you're facing. Let me tell you about the surveillance network. You've never been alone. Not once in 200 years. Every settlement on the eastern surface is monitored by greenhouse assets. Human operatives embedded in your communities. Automated systems hidden in ruins and wilderness. Aerial drones disguised as birds. So small you'd never notice them. So quiet you'd never hear them. We see everything. We hear everything. We know your population numbers and your resource supplies and your defensive capabilities. We know who your leaders are and what they care about and what would make them compromise their principles. We know your weaknesses, your fears, your hopes, and we use that knowledge. Every major event in the Eastern Wasteland for the past century was influenced by greenhouse operations. Not caused, necessarily. We didn't start the war between the NCR and Caesar's Legion. We didn't create the super mutant threat, or the feral ghoul swarms, or the raider gangs. But we shaped them. We nudged them. We made sure they developed in ways that served our interests. When Caesar's Legion started expanding east from Arizona, we provided them with intelligence on NCR troop movements. We wanted the conflict to escalate. We wanted both sides to exhaust themselves fighting over territory that we planned to take anyway. When the Brotherhood of Steel in the capital wasteland started getting too powerful, we arranged for the Enclave to attack Project Purity. We wanted the Brotherhood and the Enclave to destroy each other while the Lone Wanderer watched, convinced they were making choices that mattered. When the Institute in the Commonwealth became a threat, we activated the Sole Survivor to either destroy them or take control of them, either outcome weakening the region enough to make our eventual occupation easier. Every hero's journey you've ever heard of was a greenhouse operation. Every victory you celebrated was a defeat we planned. Every enemy you conquered was an enemy we created specifically for you to conquer, so you would feel strong enough to stop preparing for the real enemy, us. We are the real enemy. We have always been the real enemy, and you never even knew we existed. How do you fight that? How do you resist an enemy that knows everything about you while you know nothing about them? I don't know, but I know you have to try. And I know that the first step is understanding exactly how deep the manipulation goes. Let me give you specifics. Let me tell you about some of the operations that shaped the wasteland you live in. In 2242, the Chosen One from Arroyo destroyed the Enclave oil rig off the California coast. You know that story. The brave tribal who saved their village and eliminated the last remnant of the old American government. Here's what you don't know. The Enclave oil rig was scheduled for decommissioning anyway. It was old, corroded, running out of the resources needed to sustain its population. The Enclave leadership knew they had to relocate to the mainland within a decade, and they were already moving key personnel and equipment to Raven Rock in the capital wasteland. We let the Chosen One destroy the rig because it served our purposes. It eliminated the Enclave's California presence without revealing greenhouse involvement. It created a legend that would inspire the wasteland for generations. and it allowed us to blame every subsequent Enclave activity on remnants and survivors instead of revealing that the real operation was continuing underground. The Chosen One thought they won. They did win, technically, but they won a battle we wanted them to win against an enemy we wanted them to destroy. Their victory was our victory too. In 2277, the Lone Wanderer activated Project Purity and brought clean water to the capital wasteland. Another legend, another story of hope triumphing over despair. Here's what you don't know. Project Purity was never meant to succeed. The original plan was for the Enclave to capture the facility and use it as a bargaining chip to establish control over the region. Colonel Autumn would offer clean water in exchange for loyalty. The wasteland would accept because they were desperate, and the Enclave would become the dominant faction in the capital. Wasteland, drawing all the resistance and attention while Greenhouse continued operating in the shadows. But James, the Lone Wanderer's father, flooded the control room with radiation and killed himself before Autumn could secure the facility. That wasn't in the script. We didn't anticipate that he would sacrifice himself. We didn't anticipate that the Lone Wanderer would find a way to activate the purifier without Enclave control. So we adapted. We let Project Purity succeed. We let the Brotherhood distribute water across the wasteland. We let them become heroes. And then we started undermining them in other ways. Raider attacks on water caravans, contamination scares that made people distrust the purified water, political conflicts between Brotherhood leadership and the communities they were trying to help. The capital wasteland has clean water now, but it doesn't have unity. It doesn't have stability. The Brotherhood is strong, but they're hated by half the settlements they claim to protect. The region is exactly as fractured as we need it to be. Every victory has a cost. Every triumph creates new weaknesses, and we know how to exploit every single one. In 2281, the Second Battle of Hoover Dam decided the fate of the Mojave. The courier chose a side, or chose no side, and the region's future was determined. Here's what you don't know. Every outcome of that battle served our purposes. If the NCR won, they would overextend themselves trying to hold the Mojave while also defending California. Resources would be stretched thin. Military strength would be diluted across too much territory. If the Legion won, they would establish a brutal dictatorship that would inevitably collapse after Caesar's death. The Mojave would descend into chaos when his successors fought each other for control. If House won, he would create a technological enclave focused on New Vegas while ignoring the rest of the region. The surrounding wasteland would remain unorganized and vulnerable. If the courier established independence, the Mojave would become a fragmented collection of settlements with no central authority and no coordinated defense. We didn't care who won. We just needed the battle to happen. We needed the NCR and the Legion to bleed each other. We needed the Mojave to remain contested territory that would never unite against us. The courier thought they were deciding the fate of the region. They were really just choosing which flavor of weakness they preferred. I could go on. I could tell you about every operation we've run in the past century, but you don't have time to listen to all of it, and I don't have time to tell it. What matters is that you understand the pattern. We don't control the wasteland directly. We can't. There are too many variables, too many people, too much chaos. What we do instead is shape the environment. We create conditions that make certain outcomes likely. We introduce factors that push events in directions that serve our interests. We make you think you're making choices, when really, you're just selecting from options we provided. The wasteland isn't chaos. It's a garden, and we've been tending it for 200 years, pruning the branches that grow too strong, fertilizing the conflicts that keep you divided, making sure nothing ever grows powerful enough to threaten us. How do you break free of that? How do you make choices that aren't on the menu we wrote? I don't know, but I know that awareness is the first step. I know that once you see the pattern, you can start to resist it. I know that if you understand how we manipulate you, you can start making decisions that we didn't anticipate. The courier did it. The courier survived when they weren't supposed to and made choices we didn't predict and changed the Mojave in ways we never planned. And if the courier could do it, maybe you can too. Maybe that's what the wasteland needs. Not heroes following scripts, not champions completing missions we designed for them, just people. Ordinary people making choices that nobody predicted, doing things that nobody expected, breaking the pattern. I want to believe that's possible. I have to believe it's possible, because if it's not, then everything I'm doing is pointless. Let me tell you about the one thing that gives me hope. In 2287, the sole survivor made a choice that we didn't anticipate. After everything they'd been through, after finding their son and discovering what he'd become, after seeing the Institute from the inside and understanding what it really was, they made a choice that wasn't on any of our projections. They tried to save the synths, not just the synths in the Institute, all of them. Every synthetic humanoid that had been created and released into the Commonwealth, living as people, believing they were people. The sole survivor worked with the railroad to evacuate as many synths as possible before the Institute was destroyed. They gave them new identities, new memories, new lives. They treated them as people worth saving instead of machines to be destroyed. That wasn't supposed to happen. Our models said the sole survivor would either destroy the Institute completely, synths and all, or take control of it and continue its work. Those were the only two outcomes we anticipated, but they found a third option. They found a way to destroy the institution while saving the individuals inside it. They found a way to see past the categories we had created and recognize that there were people worth protecting regardless of whether they were born or manufactured. I don't know if the synths are people. I don't know if they have souls or consciousness or whatever it is that makes someone a person, but I know that the sole survivor thought they did, and I know that they made a choice based on that belief, a choice that we never predicted. That's what I mean by breaking the pattern. That's what I mean by making decisions that aren't on to the menu. The sole survivor looked at a situation we had designed and found an option we hadn't included. They changed the equation. If you're going to survive Reclamation Day, you need to do the same thing. You need to look at the choices we're giving you and find the ones we didn't include. You need to see past the options and find the outcomes we never anticipated. Unite when we expect you to fight. Trust when we expect you to suspect. Protect each other when we expect you to compete. Be people, that's all. Just be people, making human choices instead of following the scripts we wrote. I know that sounds naive. I know it sounds like I'm asking you to fight a war with wishful thinking, but I've spent 32 years studying surface psychology, and I've learned one thing above all else. People are unpredictable. No matter how much data we collect, no matter how sophisticated our models become, no matter how carefully we design our operations, people always find ways to surprise us. They form attachments we didn't anticipate. They develop loyalties that don't serve their interests. They sacrifice themselves for strangers. They choose hope over survival. Those are weaknesses in our models. Those are gaps in our predictions. And every gap is an opportunity for you to do something we didn't expect. The courier survived being shot in the head. The Brotherhood changed its entire philosophy. The sole survivor saved the synths. Time after time, people did things that our models said they wouldn't do. Time after time, you prove that we don't understand you as well as we think we do. That's your advantage. That's the only advantage you have against an enemy with superior numbers, superior technology, and 2 centuries of preparation. Be unpredictable. Be the thing we didn't account for. Let me tell you one more thing before this recording ends. One more piece of information that might make a difference. Greenhouse has a weakness. We're not unified. We're not the monolithic organization that I've been describing. We have factions, divisions, conflicts. The committee rules by consensus, but that consensus is fragile. Different districts have different priorities. Different departments have different agendas. The military leadership doesn't always agree with the political leadership. The scientists don't always agree with either. For 2 centuries, the goal of Reclamation Day has held us together. It's the one thing everyone in Greenhouse agrees on. The one purpose that supersedes all our internal conflicts. But there are cracks. Some of us don't believe in Reclamation Day anymore. Some of us have seen the files, done the math, and realized that conquering the surface will cost more than it's worth. Some of us think we should stay underground, let the surface develop on its own, and maybe someday emerge as partners instead of conquerors. Some of us think the surface dwellers are people, not degenerates, not mutants, not resources to be exploited. People, and we don't want to be part of an army that massacres people. I'm not the first Greenhouse officer to defect. I told you that already. There are others who've sent information to the surface, who've sabotaged operations, who've tried to slow down the Reclamation Day preparations. The committee catches most of them. Most of them end up in the deep geothermal levels, which is a polite way of saying they're executed and their bodies are incinerated. But some of them succeed. Some of them get information out. Some of them make contact with surface factions and establish relationships that the committee doesn't know about. If you're smart, you'll find those relationships, you'll cultivate them, you'll treat the Greenhouse defectors as assets instead of enemies. Because when Reclamation Day comes, you're going to need people on the inside. You're going to need soldiers who hesitate before firing, officers who question orders, scientists who provide intelligence instead of weapons. We exist. There aren't many of us, but we exist. And if you can find us, if you can connect us to each other and to your own networks, you might be able to turn Greenhouse's internal divisions into a real fracture. I don't know if it's possible. I don't know if the cracks are deep enough, but it's something. It's a chance. Take it. Take every chance you get, because you don't have many, and the ones you do have won't last long. There's one more recording after this one. It contains technical data, locations of tunnel exits, deployment schedules, communication frequencies, the kind of information that will actually help you prepare instead of just understanding what you're preparing for. But before you listen to it, I want you to do something. I want you to think about what you're willing to sacrifice, because this war isn't going to be won with information. It isn't going to be won with weapons or soldiers or strategies. It's going to be won by people who care about something more than their own survival. People who will give up their lives, their comfort, their certainty, for the chance that something better might be possible. I'm not asking you to be heroes. The Wasteland has had enough heroes. They follow scripts and complete missions, and everybody cheers when they succeed, and then nothing changes. The Wasteland stays broken. The factions stay divided. The people stay desperate. I'm asking you to be something harder than heroes. I'm asking you to be neighbors. I'm asking you to look at the settlement down the road that you've been feuding with for 20 years and see them as allies instead of competitors. I'm asking you to look at the faction you've always disagreed with and find the things you have in common. I'm asking you to give up your grudges and your suspicions and your certainty that you're right and everyone else is wrong. I'm asking you to trust each other, and I know how hard that is. I know the Wasteland teaches you not to trust anyone. I know that lesson has been reinforced by 200 years of betrayals and disappointments, and people who let you down when you needed them most. But some of those betrayals were us. Some of those disappointments were operations we designed to keep you suspicious of each other. We taught you not to trust because trust is dangerous to us. Trust leads to unity. Unity leads to strength. Strength leads to resistance. So trust anyway. Trust even though it's hard. Trust even though you've been hurt before. Trust because it's the one thing we never wanted you to do. And if you can do that, if you can actually build the kind of unity that the wasteland has never had, then maybe you have a chance. Maybe when the reclamation army marches out of the mountains, they'll find something they didn't expect. They'll find people who refuse to break. That's all I have. That's everything I know that might help you survive. My name was Colonel Marcus Webb. I served Greenhouse for 32 years. I helped design operations that killed thousands of people and prevented millions more from ever building anything that lasted. I can't undo that. I can't bring back the dead or heal the damage I caused. All I can do is give you this. All I can do is tell you the truth and hope that it makes a difference. Make it make a difference, please. For everyone I helped them hurt, for everyone who deserved better, make it mean something. This is the final recording. The technical data, the information that might actually save your lives when the reclamation army comes. I'm going to give you everything I have. Locations, schedules, frequencies, protocols, the kind of intelligence that military commanders spend years trying to gather. I'm giving it to you for free because I don't have anyone else to give it to, and because you're going to need every advantage you can get. But first, I need to tell you one more story, one more piece of the puzzle that ties everything together. I need to tell you about the Overseer Initiative. You know about Vault Overseers. Every vault had one. The authority figure who made decisions, enforced rules, and theoretically kept everyone alive until the all-clear signal came. Most of them were Vault Tech employees, carefully selected for their willingness to follow orders and implement whatever experiment their vault was designed to conduct. What you don't know is that the Overseer system didn't end with Vault Tech. It evolved, it grew, and it became one of the most important tools in Greenhouse's surface manipulation arsenal. In 2098, 21 years after the Great War, the committee established a new program. They called it the Overseer Initiative. The goal was simple: identify emerging leaders on the surface, individuals with the charisma and organizational skills to unite communities, and either recruit them as assets or eliminate them as threats. At first, the program was straightforward. We watched settlements develop, identified the people who were making them successful, and made decisions about whether those people served our interests. If they did, we left them alone or provided covert support. If they didn't, we arranged accidents, raider attacks, diseases, supply shortages that made their communities turn against them. But over time, the program evolved. We realized that it wasn't enough to react to leaders after they emerged. We needed to create them ourselves. We needed to raise people from childhood who would lead surface communities in directions that served our purposes. So we started placing operatives, not just informants or saboteurs, actual leaders. People born and raised in Greenhouse, trained in governance and manipulation, and then inserted into surface communities with fabricated backgrounds and carefully constructed personalities. They would work their way into positions of authority, and once they were there, they would shape their communities according to our designs. Some of them became settlement mayors, some became faction commanders, some became merchants or caravan bosses or doctors, people whose advice was trusted and whose influence shaped decisions. I don't know how many are still active. The Overseer Initiative files are compartmentalized, and I only had access to the ones related to my own operations. But I know there are dozens, maybe hundreds. People living on the surface right now who think they're wastelanders, who have friends and families and histories that feel completely real, but who are actually following programming they don't even know they have. How do you find them? I don't know. They're designed to be undetectable. Their backgrounds are airtight. Their personalities are carefully calibrated to match their communities. They've been living their cover identities for so long that most of them probably believe them completely, but there might be signs, patterns of decisions that always seem to lead to conflict, advice that sounds reasonable but somehow makes things worse, alliances that fall apart for reasons nobody can quite explain. If you find those patterns, investigate them carefully, because an Overseer Initiative operative who realizes they've been compromised will activate termination protocols, and those protocols usually involve taking as many people as possible with them. I'm sorry. I know this makes it harder. I know it means you can't trust anyone completely, not even the people you've known your whole lives. But you need to know. You need to understand exactly how deep we've penetrated your communities. We're everywhere. We've been everywhere for 200 years. And the only way you're going to root us out is by being smarter than we expected you to be. Now, the technical data. Pay attention, because this is what you actually came for. Greenhouse has 12 primary exit tunnels connecting our districts to the surface. I'm going to give you the locations of the 7 I know about. Exit Alpha is located in the Cranberry Bog region of Appalachia, approximately 3 miles southeast of the abandoned Watoga facility. The entrance is concealed beneath a collapsed highway overpass. It's defended by automated turret systems and a garrison of 40 soldiers on rotating 8-hour shifts. Exit Beta is in the Savage Divide, inside what appears to be a collapsed mine shaft near the border of the Toxic Valley. The shaft goes down approximately 200 feet before connecting to a horizontal tunnel that leads to District 4. Garrison strength is similar to Alpha, 40 soldiers with automated support. Exit Gamma is in the Capital Wasteland, beneath the ruins of a pre-war government building in the northwest sector. I don't know the exact location because it was outside my operational area, but it's within 5 miles of the old Raven Rock facility. The Enclave used it as a supply route during their occupation. Now it's one of our primary considered deployment points for the eastern seaboard. Exit Delta is in the Commonwealth, somewhere in the glowing sea. The radiation there is high enough that most wastelanders avoid it, which makes it perfect for concealed operations. The garrison is smaller than the others because the environment provides natural security. Exit Epsilon is in Virginia, in the mountains west of the Capital Wasteland. It connects to District 7, the agricultural sector, and it's primarily used for supply transport rather than troop deployment. But it could be converted to military use within 48 hours if the committee ordered it. Exit Zeta is in North Carolina, in the foothills of the Appalachian Range. I don't have detailed information about this one because it's controlled by District 9, which handles deep cover operations. But I know it exists, and I know it's been used to insert operatives into the southern wastes. Exit Ada is in Pennsylvania, north of the Commonwealth border. It's the newest exit point, completed only 15 years ago, and it's designed specifically for rapid deployment of armored units. The tunnel is wide enough for 3 columns of power armored soldiers to march side by side. Those are the 7 I know about. There are 5 more, but I never had access to their locations. They're probably distributed across the remaining regions, ensuring that the Reclamation Army can deploy simultaneously across the entire eastern surface. Each exit is connected to a primary tunnel that runs back to the central districts. The tunnels are approximately 50 feet in diameter, lined with reinforced concrete and steel, and equipped with maglev transport systems that can move troops and equipment at speeds over 200 miles per hour. When Reclamation Day comes, the Reclamation Army won't march to the surface, they'll ride. The tunnels are also the most vulnerable part of our infrastructure. They're designed to handle traffic, not combat. The ventilation systems are centralized. The power conduits are exposed. If you could get forces inside those tunnels, you could cause damage that would take months to repair. I don't know how you would get forces inside. The exits are heavily defended, and we have security protocols for detecting intrusion. But if you found a way, if you could somehow breach the perimeter and get into the tunnel network, you could cripple our deployment capability before the war even starts. Think about it. Consider your options. Maybe there's something I'm not seeing. Next, communication frequencies. Greenhouse uses a proprietary encryption system for all military communications. I can't give you the encryption keys because they're changed weekly and I don't have access to the current set. But I can give you the base frequencies, and if you have anyone with signals intelligence experience, they might be able to work with that. Primary command frequency is 127.45 MHz. Secondary is 134.875. Emergency. Fallback is 142.2. Those are the channels that the Reclamation Army will use for coordination during deployment. We also monitor surface frequencies constantly. If you're communicating over radio, assume we're listening. Use couriers for sensitive information. Use coded language. Use anything except open broadcast, because we have listening posts across the entire eastern seaboard and we will hear you. The listening posts are usually disguised as ruins. Collapsed buildings, abandoned vehicles, piles of rubble that nobody would look twice at. Inside, there's a small automated station that captures signals and transmits them back to our intelligence division. I don't know all the locations, but I know there are at least 3 within 10 miles of every major settlement. If you can find them and destroy them, you'll blind us in that area. It won't last long because we'll send repair teams, but it might give you a window to communicate without being heard. Next, deployment schedules. The Reclamation Army operates on a standard readiness rotation. At any given time, 40% of our forces are at full combat readiness, able to deploy within 6 hours. Another 40% are at partial readiness, able to deploy within 24 hours. The remaining 20% are on rest rotation and would need 48 hours to reach combat status. When the committee gives the order for Reclamation Day, the full readiness forces will deploy first, securing the exit points and establishing perimeters around major surface settlements. The partial readiness forces will follow 12 hours later to reinforce and expand the occupation zone. The rest rotation forces will deploy last, providing garrison strength for long-term occupation. Total deployment time from order to full occupation is approximately 72 hours, 3 days to conquer the eastern surface. That's what the committee's projections show. Those projections assume no organized resistance. They assume the surface factions will be caught off guard, unable to coordinate, unable to mount an effective defense. If those assumptions are wrong, if you're actually ready when we come, the timeline extends, maybe significantly. Every hour you can delay the deployment is an hour you can use to organize, evacuate civilians, and establish defensive positions. Every soldier you can tie down at an exit point is a soldier who isn't marching on your settlements. Time is a weapon. Use it. Next, order of battle. The Reclamation Army is organized into 12 divisions, 1 for each district. Each division has approximately 160,000 soldiers, divided into brigades, battalions, and companies, using a structure similar to the pre-war United States Army. The first wave will consist of the 1st, 3rd, and 7th divisions, deploying from exits Alpha, Gamma, and Eta. These are our best equipped units, with the highest proportion of T-65 power armor and heavy weapons. Their targets are the Capital Wasteland, the Commonwealth, and Appalachia. The second wave will be the 2nd, 5th, and 9th divisions, deploying from Beta, Delta, and Zeta. Their targets are the surrounding regions, cutting off escape routes and establishing a perimeter around the initial occupation zone. The remaining 6 divisions will deploy as needed based on resistance levels and strategic priorities. If a region is heavily defended, additional divisions will be redirected there. If a region falls quickly, its allocated forces will be sent to reinforce other operations. The overall commander is General Adrienne Stone. She's a 3rd-generation greenhouse officer, completely loyal to the committee and absolutely ruthless. She's spent her entire career preparing for Reclamation Day, and she will not hesitate to order mass casualties if she believes it serves the mission. Her second in command is Colonel Franklin Torres. He's more moderate than Stone, more willing to consider alternatives to direct assault. If something happened to stone during the early stages of deployment, Taurus might be open to negotiation. I don't know if that's useful information, but it might be. Next, rules of engagement. The Reclamation Army's standing orders for surface contact are as follows. All humans are to be subdued and processed for genetic evaluation. Genetically acceptable subjects are to be relocated to holding facilities for integration into greenhouse society. Genetically unacceptable subjects are to be terminated. Ghouls are to be terminated on sight, regardless of ferality status. Super mutants are to be terminated on sight. Synths are to be terminated on sight, and their components collected for analysis. Anyone who resists processing is classified as hostile and subject to immediate termination. Anyone who aids resistance is classified as hostile. Anyone who possesses weapons and refuses to surrender them is classified as hostile. The threshold for hostile classification is very low. The soldiers have been trained to see surface dwellers as dangerous, unpredictable, possibly hostile by nature. They will not give you the benefit of the doubt. They will not wait to see if you're friendly. If you look like a threat, you will be treated as a threat. That's what you're facing. An army that sees you as subhuman, that has been taught to kill first and evaluate later, that will not respond to surrender or negotiation or pleas for mercy. I'm not telling you this to scare you. I'm telling you because you need to understand what kind of enemy you're dealing with. This isn't a faction you can reason with. This isn't a conflict you can resolve through diplomacy. When they come, they will come to conquer, and they will kill anyone who stands in their way. Prepare accordingly. Now, the last piece of information, the one that might matter more than anything else I've told you. Reclamation Day has a weakness. I told you about the internal divisions in Greenhouse, the Better Day, factions that don't believe in conquest. The officers and scientists who think the surface dwellers are people worth protecting. Those divisions are real, but they're not enough to stop Reclamation Day on their own. The committee has too much control. The loyalists are too numerous. The dissenters are scattered and unorganized. But there's something else. Something the committee doesn't know about. Something that's been growing in Greenhouse for the past 50 years without anyone in leadership realizing how big it's become. The children of the surface. I told you about the extraction program. The thousands of surface children who were taken from their families and raised as Greenhouse citizens. Most of them don't know their origins. Most of them are completely loyal to the society that raised them, but some of them found out. Some of them accessed classified files, or noticed inconsistencies in their records, or simply felt that something was wrong their whole lives, and finally discovered what it was. And when they learned the truth about where they came from, something changed in them. They started talking to each other, quietly, carefully, building a network of people who shared their origins and their anger and their determination to do something about it. They call themselves the Returners. I don't know how many there are, hundreds at least, maybe thousands. They're embedded throughout Greenhouse society, in every district, every department, every level of authority. They've been preparing for Reclamation Day just like everyone else. But they're not preparing to conquer, they're preparing to resist. When the deployment order comes, the Returners are going to act. They're going to sabotage systems, disrupt communications, provide intelligence to the surface. They're going to do everything they can to slow down the Reclamation Army and give the Wasteland time to organize. They're not going to succeed. I need you to understand that. There aren't enough of them, and they don't have enough access to critical systems. They'll cause problems, but they won't stop the deployment. But they might create opportunities. Gaps in the security, moments of confusion that you can exploit, windows where the Reclamation Army isn't at full effectiveness and you can do damage you couldn't do otherwise. Watch for those windows. Be ready to move when they open, because they won't stay open long. The Returners have a contact protocol for reaching surface allies. If you want to communicate with them, Broadcast the following message on frequency 142.2 at midnight, any night, 3 times repeated. The message is, the garden remembers the seeds. They'll hear it. They have people monitoring that frequency constantly, and if they decide you're trustworthy, they'll make contact. I can't guarantee they'll trust you. I can't guarantee they'll be able to help when you need them, but they're there, inside Greenhouse, waiting for the chance to do something that matters. Use them. And when Reclamation Day comes, remember that not everyone wearing Greenhouse armor is your enemy. That's everything. That's every piece of useful information I have. I want to say something else before this recording ends. Something personal. Something that probably won't help you survive, but that I need to say anyway. I believed in Greenhouse. For most of my life, I genuinely believed that what we were doing was right. I believed we were preserving America, protecting the best of humanity, preparing to rebuild civilization after the surface had recovered enough to support us. I believed the surface was chaos. I believed the people up there were damaged, corrupted, incapable of building anything that lasted. I believed that when we finally emerged, they would be grateful. They would see our cities and our technology and our civilization, and they would understand that we were their salvation. I believed all of it because that's what I was taught, because everyone around me believed it, because questioning it meant questioning everything about the world I lived in and the life I had built. When I started to see the truth, when I started to understand what we had really been doing for 200 years, I wanted to deny it. I wanted to find explanations, justifications, ways to make it fit with what I had always believed. I spent months trying to convince myself that there was a good reason for extended winter, for the extraction program, for all of it. There wasn't. There is no good reason. We've been poisoning the surface because we're afraid of it. We've been stealing children because we don't have enough of our own. We've been keeping the wasteland broken because a healed wasteland might not need us. Everything I believed was a lie, and everything I did in service of those lies was wrong. I can't fix it. 32 years of wrong can't be fixed by one data transmission. The people I helped kill are still dead. The settlements I helped destroy are still rubble. The children we stole are still lost. But maybe you can do something with what I've given you. Maybe you can take this information and use it to save lives that would otherwise be lost. Maybe you can find a way to stop Reclamation Day, or at least make it cost so much that the committee decides it's not worth continuing. Maybe you can build something better than what I helped destroy. I won't be there to see it. I'm already dead by the time you're hearing this. But I want you to know that I hope you succeed. Not for my sake, for yours. For everyone on the surface who deserves a chance to live without us controlling their lives. You're not what we said you were. You're not broken or corrupted or incapable. You're people, survivors, builders. You took a world that we deliberately poisoned and you made something out of it anyway. That means something. That has to mean something. So survive. Fight back. Build your alliances and train your soldiers and find every advantage you can find. And when the Reclamation Army comes, show them what the wasteland is really made of. Show them that 200 years of manipulation wasn't enough to beat you. Show them that you were never as weak as they thought. There's a question I need you to ask yourselves. A question that might determine whether you actually survive what's coming or just delay it for a while. What happens after? Assume you win. Assume you find a way to stop Reclamation Day, to destroy the tunnel exits, to cripple the deployment so badly that the committee decides to call it off. What then? Greenhouse will still exist. 50 million people will still be living under the mountains with technology and resources that dwarf anything on the surface. The committee will still be in power, and they'll still want what they've always wanted. Do you keep fighting? Do you try to invade Greenhouse and conquer us the way we tried to conquer you? Do you seal the exits and try to contain us underground forever? Or do you find another way? The returners want to change Greenhouse from the inside. They want to remove the committee, reform the government, and build a society that can coexist with the surface instead of dominating it. They believe that most greenhouse citizens aren't evil, just misled, just following orders, just believing what they were taught the same way I did. Maybe they're right. Maybe if the committee was gone and the propaganda stopped and people could actually see the surface for what it really is, they would choose differently. Maybe they would want peace instead of conquest. Or maybe they wouldn't. Maybe 2 centuries of conditioning can't be undone. Maybe greenhouse will always be a threat, no matter who's in charge. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, but I know you need to think about it. Because winning the battle doesn't mean winning the war. It doesn't mean the threat goes away. Somehow, you and Greenhouse have to find a way to share this continent, whether that's through conquest or containment or coexistence. You have to figure it out, because neither side is going away and neither side can afford to fight forever. Think about it, talk about it, make it part of your planning, because the worst thing that could happen is that you survive Reclamation Day and then have no idea what to do next. If this confession meant something to you, leave a like. It's the only way I know you liked the video. I've said everything I can say. The rest is up to you. My name was Colonel Marcus Webb. I was a monster who decided too late to be something else. I hope the information I've provided saves more lives than I helped take. I hope you prove us wrong about everything. I hope you win. Signing off. The recording ends there. Static fills the frequency for a long moment before cutting to silence. Somewhere in Appalachia, a Brotherhood scribe stares at her terminal, watching data scroll across the screen. Locations, frequencies, schedules. More intelligence than she's ever seen in one place. Her hands are shaking. She reaches for the microphone, ready to relay what she's received to her superiors at the Citadel. But she hesitates. She thinks about what Colonel Webb said, about how Greenhouse monitors every frequency, about how they intercept everything. She turns off the radio. She starts copying the data to holotapes, physical media, something she can carry by hand to people she trusts. It will take longer, weeks, maybe, months to get the information to everyone who needs it, but it will be secure, it will be safe, and maybe, when she's done, the wasteland will finally be ready for what's coming. Maybe. The year is 2285. Reclamation Day is scheduled for 2,291, 6 years, 2,190 days to do the impossible, 2,190 days to unite a wasteland that has never been united, 2,190 days to prepare for a war that nobody knew was coming. The clock is ticking. The question is whether anyone is listening. In the capital wasteland, a young soldier in Brotherhood, power armor, hears a rumor about a secret transmission, information from inside a shadow government that's been pulling strings for 200 years. She dismisses it as wasteland nonsense, conspiracy theories from people with too much time and not enough water. But that night, she can't sleep. She keeps thinking about the operations she's been sent on, the enemies that appeared out of nowhere, the missions that seemed designed to fail. She starts asking questions. In the Commonwealth, a synth named Chase lives in a small settlement north of Diamond City. She doesn't know she's a synth. The railroad gave her new memories, a new identity, a new life. She thinks she's a wastelander who grew up in a farming community and traveled south looking for work. She's happy. She has friends. She has a purpose. And then she overhears 2 traders talking about Greenhouse, about synths being targeted for termination when the army comes, about how there won't be anywhere safe for her kind. She doesn't understand why the words fill her with such dread. She doesn't understand why she suddenly feels like she's been running her whole life without knowing it. But she knows she needs to find out more. In New Vegas, an old courier sits in a bar, listening to the radio. The signal is weak this far west, barely intelligible through the static. But certain words come through clearly. Greenhouse, Reclamation Day. 2 million soldiers. The courier finishes their drink and stands up. They haven't carried a package in years. Haven't traveled farther than the edge of town in longer than they can remember. But they know the wasteland. They know every trail, every shortcut, every hidden path from California to the capital. And they know that if the Brotherhood in the East needs to talk to the NCR in the West, someone is going to have to carry the message. Might as well be them. In the Appalachian Mountains, deep beneath the surface, a young woman named Sarah Chen reports for duty at her station in the surveillance division. She's a third-generation greenhouse citizen, loyal to the committee, proud to serve, but her hands hesitate over the controls. She's been having dreams lately. Dreams about a family she doesn't remember, a home she's never seen, a mother calling a name that isn't hers. She tells herself it's stress. She tells herself it's nothing. But when she runs her security scan and finds an anomalous transmission on frequency 142.2, she hesitates before reporting it, just for a moment, just long enough. The wasteland is waking up, slowly, uncertainly, not sure yet what it's waking up to, but it's waking up, and maybe that's enough. Maybe that's exactly what Colonel Marcus Webb died for.